Chapter 253, Night Thoughts. She really has quite the character. Klein smiled in response to Miss Bodyguard's reply, a very obvious smile. Yes, to be able to fend off Rozago, a nimble right master, for a short period of time to the extent of having a seesaw battle. She's most likely a Sequence 5 Beyonder. I wonder what sequence pathway she belongs to and what her potion name is. Her state is rather unique. If it weren't for her, I wouldn't have even had the chance to use the language of foulness. Klein picked up the newspaper beside him and pretended to read, but he was actually thinking. However, he quickly turned his attention back to the issue of whether there were still loopholes on the matter. For example, the contaminated Beyonder characteristic left behind by Rozago had an intense luster of spirituality. It was very likely that it couldn't be concealed by the iron cigarette case alone, so it would be exposed under the prying eyes of others using spirit vision. Klein secretly activated his spirit vision and looked down at his pocket. He could see faint colorful lusters emanating from within the iron cigarette case, but it wasn't obvious and was rather thin. This was mixed with the color of his own aura, making it difficult to distinguish or detect it. That's right. Only a high sequence Beyonder can identify it through to levels of interference. No wonder all kinds of materials, like herbal powders and the corresponding essential oil extracts, are kept in metal bottles and not wooden vessels. It's because they contain spirituality, and those with better spirit vision can see through wood and see the color of the auras. Klein suddenly understood some of the important details in mysticism. In the past, he did things according to the rules without considering the reasons behind them. But now, he understood the underlying reason behind the rules. After repeatedly checking and ensuring that everything was in order, Klein put down the newspapers and walked to the second floor. He had originally planned to take off his clothes and take a bath to completely relax himself. But when he thought of how Miss Bodyguard could appear out of nowhere in his house, he felt a little uneasy. Therefore, he only washed his face, brushed his teeth, and soaked his feet in hot water. Returning to his bedroom and taking off his coat, Klein hid his belongings before he collapsed onto the bed. As he was exhausted and had held on for quite a while, he ended up with tense nerves that prevented him from quickly falling asleep. Opening his eyes to look at the crimson moonlight on the ceiling, Klein didn't attempt to sleep with the help of cogitation. Instead, he aimlessly unfurled his thoughts, as if he were riding a horse without pulling at the reins. As his thoughts wandered, he quickly noticed a problem, having encountered too many coincidences in Tingen City, and later learning how it was related to sealed artifact 008. My second case after arriving at Backland allowed me to get the next 3 potions formulas. Is that too much of a coincidence? Although this is in line with the revelation from my divination, Backland contains the opportunities for me to become powerful. Isn't it too fast and simple? Simple doesn't refer to the difficulty, but rather to the degree of twists and turns in the matter. This matter was very difficult and dangerous, but it wasn't complex and appeared simple. According to my expectations, I would have gathered information regarding the secret order through Miss Justice, Mr. Hangman, and Miss Yaw and her companion, and then I would catch the tail of this ancient organization. After numerous twists and turns, I would eventually obtain the formulas, and that would have taken at least 3 months. Who knew that I would have succeeded in less than 3 weeks? It can't be that it was arranged by someone again, right? Yes, let me think through the circumstances again. It's no coincidence that the Intis Republic is related to the Secret Order. Emperor Rozel's diary has confirmed this circumstantially. The abilities of the Seer and Faceless are very suited for an intelligence organization. For a mid-sequence Beyonder of a similar pathway, to become the assistant of an intelligence czar, like Bakerland, is reasonable and normal. That's not a coincidence. The reason that the ambassador sent someone to take revenge on me likely has to do with him wanting to divert attention. Then, sending Rizago, who can most easily succeed and escape, is a choice with reduced risk. That's not surprising at all. It was quite normal for Ian to look for new detectives in the papers, after none of the detectives he knew were willing to accept his mission of tracking down Zreal. There weren't many new detectives advertising on the papers at the time, and I was probably the only one. Well, I was the only one on the Backland Bulletin. Just like what I've concluded previously, the problem with Merso was that he was too rash, and I was worried that it's not easy to disguise myself usually, as it can end up attracting more attention. Therefore, I didn't try to disguise myself. Although these two possibilities, especially the former, has the probability of being influenced, it does match the corresponding person's personality, mentality, and origins. And this isn't the main point. This doesn't explain the problem of how my second case ended up involving a mid-sequence beyonder of the seer pathway. It was destined by fate. That doesn't feel right. Thinking ahead, after I transmigrated, the first and second case one found myself embroiled in was related to the seer pathway. Of course, it could be explained as an arrangement by 08. Right, the Antigonus family's notebook even corrupted the misfortune cloth puppet and showed me the complicated vertical I symbol that involves the Antigonus family's treasure. The reason I came up with back then was that with the termination of the Antigonus family's bloodline, it viewed me, a seer who had survived despite having interacted with it, as its inheritor. Now that I think about it, this reason is extremely trifling. What if I'm a devout believer of the Evernight goddess? However, I only made a guess at that time and didn't confirm it. The Antigonus family's treasure is obviously related to the seer pathway. Thinking deeper, why did I transmigrate? Why did I happen to possess Klein's body and not anyone else back then? Klein had just proceeded with dark divination and was made to commit suicide by the Antigonus family's notebook. And that notebook is clearly related to the seer pathway. In addition, the first time I saw Roselle's diary, it had content that involved his regret of not choosing apprentice, marauder, or seer. That was very coincidental. From beginning to end, except for those parts involving 08, everything appeared to be in a mess. It doesn't seem like a conscious arrangement, but more like a kind of passive attraction. A mutual attraction, an attraction that has breaks between them. I attract things and items regarding the seer pathway, and at the same time, am attracted to them. It does seem odd thinking about it. This kind of attraction even directly influences fate, preventing even Mr. Isaac from seeing through it? Is there some strange characteristic to me? And this characteristic allows me to resurrect a limited number of times? With this in mind, Klein suddenly had the impulse to go above the gray fog, to perform a divination and confirm his ideas. But he quickly rejected this idea, not only because Miss Bodyguard might be watching in the mirror, but also because he believed that his greatest characteristic was the mysterious space above the gray fog. Therefore, it was obviously impossible for him to have an answer if he were to use it to divine about it. At least for now, there aren't any obvious signs of manipulation. It would be acceptable if it's just pure attraction and I've already chosen a beyonder pathway. That cannot be changed until sequence 4, so I can only take things one step at a time, right? I should be firm about not heading to the Hornisus mountain range to seek out the Antigonus family's treasure, heh. I have a feeling that I would say how nice it is in the future when I actually do it. Klein silently made a self-deprecating remark as he felt his exhaustion gradually wash over him. His eyelids couldn't help but close. The last thought before he fell asleep was, it should participate in more Beyonder gatherings and gather the corresponding Beyonder ingredients for Magician through Miss Justice, Mr. Hangman, and the Sun. I wouldn't reject anything for Faceless if they were available. In addition, I should obtain mystical items that have less severe negative effects. Before my digestion and increase in strength, It's best to have more life preservation abilities apart from this. Investing, taking on jobs, saving up money, and attempts to look for Lanovis, too. Use him as the starting point for my revenge can also be considered a form of practice. Those were Klein's future plans. At 7 in the morning, he woke up as usual. It was still gloomy and hazy outside. Klein got up and walked to the door. As he passed by the full-length mirror, he saw that Miss Bodyguard had suddenly appeared. She wore the same black bonnet. Her face was as pale as ever. Her voice pierced through the glass and slipped into Klein's ear in an ethereal fashion. Someone from MI9 came last night. I should say, as expected. The police came late, but I still have to thank them. For being late, Klein smiled and asked, they didn't find anything, right? In regards to the answer, he was very certain that if MI9 had discovered something, he wouldn't have been able to sleep undisturbed. No, Miss Bodyguard's figure faded and disappeared into the mirror. This ability of hers is very powerful. Even spirit vision can't detect her. Perhaps she can be seen with resagos beyond her characteristic. Find Miss Bodyguard through those hidden threads? Klein's mind stirred as he returned to the bed and took out the iron cigarette case from under his pillow. Just as he touched it, before he could even open it, a bone-piercing cold rushed at his neck. He felt his hairs stand on end, and his entire body trembled. Palf Hishin loosened, and the iron cigarette case fell to the ground. This is a warning from Miss Bodyguard, Klein laughed dryly, pretending as though nothing had happened as he stuffed the iron cigarette case into his pocket. After washing up and putting on his clothes, he arrived at the first floor and took out the newspapers that he had subscribed to from his letterbox. Flipping open the Tussock Times, Klein saw the headline, Anti-Ambassador to Backlund murdered. Terrorist organization, the Aurora Order, claims responsibility. The result is out so quickly? Besides, the Aurora Order had only accepted a job, so why would they claim responsibility? Yes, a terrorist organization needs to show off their stature and build up their image. Only then would they be able to attract enough fresh blood. This complements their secret preachings. Mr. is very good. He should be a shepherd. Klein stood in the hallway, reading the news. According to the news, there was evidence of the Aurora Order's assault on Ambassador Bakerland. In the follow-up investigation, they found a letter deliberately left behind by the Aurora Order which claimed responsibility for it. At the end of the news, the reporter briefly introduced the Aurora Order and listed some of the illegal crimes that they had committed. Their fame instantly surpassed most of the secret organizations. Regardless, this matter had come to an end. Klein exhaled, turned his head to look out the window, and he saw a thin mist filling the air as a drizzle began pattering down. Shouldn't there be bright sunshine and sunny weather during such moments? Klein gave a self-deprecating laugh. And now, he had to go out to catch some adulterers.